Hey, we're here today with Trey Jorski. Invited Trey out to ride at the Maxey Motorsports Motocross compound, and hope you had a good time.
Oh, I had a great time, Mike. Thanks for inviting me. And God, I wish I had this in my backyard.
Well, it's been 5 years in the making, and I'll tell you, if you own a track or take care of a track, it's a lot of work, but it's my hobby, and you come over anytime.
Well, I appreciate it. Yeah, maybe I could ride a little better if I had this to practice on.
Well, say, tell us a little bit about where you're from, your background. Did you grow up in Bethany, Oklahoma?
Yeah, I did. Went to Putnam City West High School and lived there in Oklahoma City pretty much my whole life till just a few years ago. We moved to Arizona, and now we're back. So hopefully get to ride some Oklahoma tracks again.
Well, how in the world did you get started racing?
Well, my dad bought me a 69 125 MX Yamaha when they came out in 69. And
Well, I bet that had good suspension.
oh, great. Yeah. And they came with trials tires and an 18-inch front wheel and an expansion chamber.
Oh my gosh.
But we had a track in our backyard. We lived on like 5 acres, and used to look in the one ads, and they had a motocross at 59th and Douglas. Most of you probably don't know that 59th and Douglas has been around that long.
I think Janie and Tom Arnold started
Tommy Arnold,
Yep.
yes.
Yep.
And they had in the newspaper, in the motorcycle one ads, they had a beginner class for $1, and it cost 50 cents to get in.
Oh boy.
So I talked my dad into it, and the beginner class was run what you brung, so there's like 50 guys in it. And the first moto I take off, and man, I get hung high. Of course, I'm about 4 feet tall. I get hung high center down there, and my dad runs down there and pushes me off, and I finish. And we kind of talk about it, and he says, why don't you start on the inside, and when they all run out wide, just go around the corner. And that worked real well. I won the next 2 motos, and it was on after that.
Oh boy.
So,
well, did you just learn to ride by the seat of your pants, or did you train with somebody, or where'd you pick up all your skills?
I just learned in the backyard. We had my dad had a railroad tie fence, and one day me and my friends took some plywood and 2x4s and stuff, and we made a jump over that railroad tie fence. And I got the cops called on me so many times for riding that Yamaha for the noise. I jumped my mom's Trail 90 Honda over that fence.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So, but once you could jump the Trail 90 Honda, the regular motorcycle was a piece of cake.
Oh gee, we did some crazy things as kids, huh?
Oh yeah, yeah. I tell you, it's
well, growing up racing at 59th, I remember those nights like they were yesterday. We just lived to go over there and race. And I remember you with all this long red hair on a Kawasaki open face helmet, which I think you still wear.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And you were just crazy fast, and it was just amazing watching you race. Really, really enjoyed it. At what point did you finally step out to what you would say the big leagues, or what we now call A class?
Well, I rode a Monarch and 2 CZs, and I was winning pretty much everything around here on that. And I was 15 years old then, and the Cowie people were just really getting into motocross, and they kept bugging my dad about trying to get me to ride the Cowie for the distributor. They had a bunch of distributors back then. They really didn't have a network like they do now. But I just kept saying, no, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. I like what I'm riding. They don't ever break. I'm making money. I don't have to work, So, and but finally, the Cowie people talked. They were giving me bikes and parts and travel and a mechanic and all that, and I finally agreed to it. And Wyman Pretty was their guy back then, and he was kind of my mentor through the distributor there. And one thing led to another, and when I was 16, I got a license, and first big race I went to was a big AMA race in Omaha, Nebraska. It was not Omaha. I forget the name of that place they called it up there, but all the factory teams were there and everything. And I went 10-3 that day against Stackable and Weiner and Runyard and DeStefano and all them guys. So that was kind of a eye opener that, I could compete with those guys. And then we went to a 250 national in New Orleans, and I went 5-6 and Tripes went 6-5. So I felt like I was right there with them. And one thing led to another after that.
Well, you've shared with me before at another time about the difficulty of leaving Oklahoma and going out of state and racing in the big leagues. And I think you kind of shared with me that if you just don't do it and start running at the faster speeds with the faster guys, it's just very difficult to get there. And I assume that was one of the hurdles you had to overcome.
It was, you got to take those bad days where, you're 16th or 17th, and till you get acclimated with running with those guys week in and week out, you just can't show up and say, I'm gonna run in the top 5, and it just doesn't happen. But once you get acclimated, you're running from, say you're running at Red Bud, or you're over in West Virginia, or you're riding the Florida series or whatever. Uh, we used to go down and ride Florida every February. That's everybody went down there, all the factory teams, and that was the tune-up to get ready for all the nationals. And you go down there and get acclimated to running with those guys, then you're ready to go.
Well, we hear the modern racers on the big circuit. We hear them talking all the time about, oh, I just spent the last 2 weeks in Florida at such and such training camp, or I'm at Carmichael's, or they go different places and do exactly that.
Yeah.
At what point did you realize that, hey, I can make this a career? Was it a hard decision?
Well, no, it wasn't, because when I was a junior in high school, and I made good money that year for a kid, and I was the Mexican national champion that year. Went to Mexico City and
I
won
remember that.
and that was a huge payday. And as long as I kept healthy, I knew that I could sustain it, and I made a living at it for 10 years till 1982. So things worked out.
Well, speaking of staying healthy, so I'm going to have to guess that you've probably had your share of breaks and injuries.
Believe it or not, probably on a motocross bike, I probably haven't been injured what you might think.
Really?
My worst injuries were riding a speedway bike. In 77, I was the Central U.S. Speedway champ. They had the Central U.S. National Championship here, and all the California guys and New York guys came, and I won both nights. But shortly after that, in 78, I just got on with Cowie again, and a guy on a bike fell in front of me, and they have no brakes, and I backed it in, and the guy behind me crushed my knee against the motor, and
oh boy,
it severed everything. It didn't just tear it. It's just like you took a knife and cut it, and shattered my kneecap and all that, and pretty much a setback. Cost me my Cowie ride. I was riding something they didn't sell. They kind of frowned on it. But
well, I know recovering from an injury, a lot of people say, oh, I'm done. And then they're like, oh, I'm thinking about riding again. Yeah, I got to get a new bike. It's like you go through all these emotions, but it's in your blood, and you can't wait to get back out there. You've probably seen a lot of changes in the industry since 1969, as far as not only machine, but tracks.
Oh, yeah. Everything now is huge jumps, big ruts. Back then, small jumps and a lot of speed.
Yeah.
Everything was natural, which I loved it. And, I was talking, I kind of had a setback in like 1976, kind of got sideways with the AMA. And I was talking with Brad Lackey, about a month ago, and he goes, he said, I went to Europe to get away from the AMA. And he goes, you should have come too. He said, because that was your kind of place, high speed, natural. Uh, and that's kind of on a high speed natural track, I feel like I could run with any of those guys. But the jump, it's just all about timing and rhythm, and one little slip up and you're out for 6 or 8 weeks.
Yeah, well, I know that for a fact. So I guess the vintage circuit emulates a lot of the old school
They
racing.
do. It's a lot of old style tracks where it's pretty safe, because the vintage crowd is the most popular, probably 50 to 70 is the age of the vintage crowd. And, they don't want to get anybody hurt. And it's a lot of fun. And some of those races, they'll have 600-700 riders at.
Yeah, I know Trampus Parker, doesn't he do a national over there in Henrietta every
Oh
year?
yeah, we go over to Trampus's every year.
Yeah.
He's really into the vintage stuff, and it's good that somebody like him that is kind of promoting that to keep people interested in it, and younger people.
It seems like kids today are starting at such a young age, and I hate to use the term parents living through their children, but you see parents push a 3 and a 4-year-old and they're just groomed from get-go. And they're so much faster than I remember the kids. We didn't have the little bikes when we were growing up.
Right.
And the whole industry's just changed so much, and these kids seem to be so much faster. Suspension is better. Like you said, jumps are bigger. What's been the biggest change that you've witnessed in your life in the race industry, in motocross?
Well, the tracks, they started changing in the 70s, and a lot of it was by accident. And the suspension on the bikes and the horsepower now, compared to, people, they look at my vintage bike, my 480, and they think, oh golly, that thing's got so much power. And I just I say my 450 KTM's got twice the power of that 480 Honda's got, and but it's just, I see a lot of parents that push their kids too far in this sport now. I see them out there, the kid's not doing this table or this double or something, and they're out there yelling at the kids. And, I think if my parents would have pushed me like that, I think I would have just turned away.
If you had any advice for these parents, where do you think the balance should be as far as how they interact with their children as parents of riders and their expectations?
Well, I think you should work with them. When you see a kid out there that's really fast, that is doing it, let's go over here and watch Johnny jump this and see what he's doing. How's he coming out of this corner? What gear's he in? Don't go out there and just say, hey, hit that thing wide open, because, he may be living in a wheelchair the rest of his life.
Yeah.
And I when I see that, I'm like, here's my motorcycle. You go out there and jump it. Then we'll then yell at your kid to jump it. I don't know. I just think some people push them too far, and I really think everybody ought to get a good education also, because I didn't. I was fortunate. I was at the right place at the right time, and I was able to make a living for 10 years doing something that I absolutely loved. And but it just doesn't happen for everybody.
What was your big takeaway from the career? Do you have anything that just made this big impression on you and has stayed with you kind of as a life lesson?
Well, when I was young, I should have let my anger get the best of me sometimes, because I didn't ride an AMA race for 2 years, and it really hurt me. That was 2 years of my prime. I mean, I rode every big $10,000, $20,000, whatever big money race that wasn't AMA. I rode all those, but you know, being out of the national spotlight and not having a national number, that I come back in '78 and I started riding a national again. But
So if you had any advice for these kids today that are racing, what would be the most important thing you could share with them?
well, you need to train and you need to be dedicated to it. If you're not, I said, you know, if you want to be a national caliber rider, it's training and dedication and getting comfortable on the motorcycle. It's I can tell that when I ride nowadays, you know, I mean, from my neck up, I still feel like I'm fast, but to be able to just go out and ride around and I don't feel comfortable. I know I can do this, but it just takes time on the bike and seat time, and there's nothing better than having seat time.
Well, that's all been some great information. On a personal level, what's in store for Trey these days? I hear you're a golfer.
I play a lot of golf. I played golf long before I ever
Yeah,
rode a motorcycle. I've been playing golf since I was 5 years old.
yeah.
I ruined my grandmother's. I hurt her feelings really bad when I was 16 and told her I wasn't going to college to play golf, that I was going to race motorcycles. But yeah, no, I ride a lot of vintage races. Ride some modern bike. Just got back from California. Rode Scott Burnsworth race out there, and but hopefully go back to the World Vet when I'm 70. But other than that, just a kind of joyride.
Oh, cool, cool. Well, shoot, Trey, I sure have enjoyed you spending some time with me, and I really enjoyed having you come out here and ride with me today. It's a lot of fun watching you ride. When I'm at Glen Helen, I always go to the line and watch you in your race. You've always had a knack for being fast off the gate, and I've always wondered what it's almost like Andrew Short.
Yeah.
I don't know what your secret is, but there's got to be a nugget that you might be able to share with kids nowadays as far as getting off the gate as well as you do every time.
Well, you know, it's a lot of hand-to-eye coordination. It's the throttle and the clutch. You know, I won the World Vet 2 years ago, and all these people have these hole shot devices and everything, and I just roll up to the line and take off and hole shot all three motos. And but it's always been about the clutch and the throttle, being able to control that and keep the front end down and going forward. And you know, the start's everything. And Wyman Pretty was my mentor when I signed with Kawasaki in '73, and he was the start king.
Yeah.
At the Nationals. He was the start king, and you know, we rode a lot together, and he used to tell me, he said, it's a whole lot easier to be out front than it is to chase them. But Mike, I really appreciate you having me out here today. I've enjoyed it, and it's hopefully I don't live too far from here. We can come back and do it again.
Oh, you come out anytime, and I hope you join us at Glen Helen this year.
Yeah, I don't know if I'll be at Glen Helen this year, but I'm only just a couple of years from 70, so
there you go.
I'll be there for sure.
Sounds good to me. Well, thanks again. Appreciate you coming out.
Take care.